Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Principal Podcast, a place where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your own practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Degnan. Join me as we talk to the best consultants in their niche. Priscilla McKinney is the CEO of Little Bird Marketing, an award-winning B2B marketing agency helping professional services firms create scalable lead generation systems through strategic content, social influence, and digital transformation. In this episode of the Principal Podcast, Priscilla shares how consulting and professional service leaders can move beyond inconsistent marketing efforts and build long-term growth through repeatable systems, stronger positioning, and relationship-driven influence. Priscilla, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I have to say, I love being on a podcast when I'm a podcaster myself. So I just like to say, for everybody who loves John's show, please stop for a moment, put us on pause. Come back, but go give him a 5-star review somewhere. So it's a labor of love. Thank you so much for having me,
Nice
John.
of you to say that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a cultural anthropologist by trade, but I'm a CEO of what I call a sleep improvement agency. And what I mean by that is that we're a digital marketing company specializing in sales and pipeline building. And so when clients actually have us handle their marketing, they start sleeping better at night.
Can you repeat that? That was interesting. Sleeping company?
Yeah, a sleep improvement agency.
Okay.
They think they're getting marketing done, but really they're finally going to start sleeping at night. And I think that's, the pressure that most marketing and CMOs and CROs and directors of revenue are feeling is just, yes, I'm and my team's doing all this activity, but are we really moving the needle? Are we really having revenue growth? And that's so important.
What originally pulled you into consulting?
Well, gosh, that's kind of crazy. I think the consulting is just about, when you really do know what you're talking about and you are what I would refer to as unconsciously competent in a particular field. I don't think you necessarily start being a consultant. It's like what you said, you get pulled into consulting and people start asking you for that advice. That advice gets a little bit more complicated every time they ask. And so it becomes a natural extension of what you do. And to say, wait a minute, hey, you're asking a lot of these questions that really require more strategic thinking and better implementation. How about we take a step back and we see about really having a consulting engagement? And so I think you'll find this, to be true, and probably is true for you. It's like we get pulled into it just by the quality of the conversations we're having and what people really, come to expect from you over time.
You're the co-author of Collaboration is the New Competition. Tell us about that.
Well, I thought that the way that I went about doing business, collaborating with people and leveraging different needs and different wants and bringing people together collectively, I thought it was just so obvious. And it was just how I did business, how I built my business, how I built, my actual agency and how I built my speaking career. And, finally, after consulting with people, I realized it's not obvious. It's obvious to me. And so it really pushed me to write the book to explain to people how I went about doing that. What was my mind state? What was my mindset when I would connect with people and build my network? And how did I go about becoming an influencer on LinkedIn? And how did I create a really big network in the B2B space? And so I thought, wait a minute, I need to break this down. And, it's one of those things that I think it's not a complicated book. When people read it, I think they go, oh, yeah, I knew it. Like they knew it, but they didn't know it. You know what I mean? Like when someone says something to you that really is true, something in you goes, I kind of knew that all along, but I never got it to the surface. I never brought it up to be a tangible framework that I could pull from. So it had maybe become some latent knowledge, but it wasn't a tool and it wasn't a framework and it wasn't something that was really helping you understand what was going on today and make the best of every opportunity you had today. So I sat down and wrote the book, Collaboration is the New Competition, and explained to people how I think. I really don't think that you need to be stingy with your knowledge and with your help. I think you need to expand that out. I think you need to really be open with other people about your needs because they might be able to fill them. And you need to surround yourself by a lot of people so that you can kind of funnel those people out who are just in it for themselves and get to the people who are in it for themselves and in it for you. They've got to be both. I'm not saying go find altruistic people. I'm saying go find people who have the verve, the moxie, the drive, and they want to win for themselves, but they are willing to win for you while they're doing it. And that's where I wrote that book from.
I looked on your website, Little Bird Marketing, and I saw care deeply, finish strong, stay gold, be true. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, those are our four core values. So, they all kind of ladder up to the big picture of who we are. But so let's kind of break down each one of them. So finish strong, in my opinion, is get shit done. That's what it equates to, right? And basically what that comes down to is like, if anything is worth starting, it's worth finishing correctly. And I think there's so much marketing out there that gets started. I have an idea, right? And people just don't create a framework or a structure. And so things are a lot of ideas that get a little bit of excitement going, but they don't actually have a plan, and then they don't see all the way through to the end. So we say at Little Bird Marketing, that's one of our core values, always to finish strong. Stay gold is one of my favorite. It's really about being the shit. Like if you are, saying to your client that, you can do something at this level of excellence, you should be able to do it at that level of excellence all the time. And it's not just about when you're getting paid. It's also about doing things when you're volunteering and staying gold. It's about the way we show up at meetings. It's about the way we dress on planes. It's about the way we treat each other. And so stay gold is really, for me, one of those anchors that remind me, you know what, if this is worth doing, it's worth doing really well. Be true is, we equate that to don't talk shit. And so we just say, look, the world is full of all kinds of negativity. We don't need any of it here. So let's be careful about what we say, and let's make sure that what we say is true. Whether that's something with pricing, or that's something with, someone's reputation, or whether that's something about, where a project stands. There's about having transparency with clients and being true. And I started talking about them, all of a sudden I'm blanking. So be true, finish strong, stay gold. And yeah, care deeply. Actually, I usually start with care deeply, but for me, care deeply is give a shit. And it's basically saying, you have to care deeply about, first and foremost, your own career. That's where we start at Little Bird Marketing. You need to be selfish for your career. Do everything you can to care deeply about what you're going to do. And then, by extension, you can care deeply for your coworkers. And I expect you to. So that goes in alignment with how you get things done. But then, if we get those things right, then we can care deeply about our client work. And we have to care deeply. This is oftentimes, when we're working with someone who's an owner or sole proprietor, this is their money. Like, this is money that they otherwise would be saving for their kids to go to college. Like, it's serious. Care deeply about how we spend it. And so not being frivolous with people's money, but that also means don't be frivolous with people's time. Let's say it's someone who is not the owner, and it's owned by private equity, and it's a, $350 million firm. Well, we should still care deeply because that's our client, and we need to be responsible for those resources. So those are our anchors here at Little Bird Marketing.
And you have a SOAR methodology, you have a system?
Yeah, SOAR, anybody can crib for me. I mentioned the problem that we have in marketing is oftentimes that people do a lot of marketing, but it's not done in the right order, and it's not stacked, and it doesn't ladder up to actual goals. And so something that your audience can crib for me without ever working with me is just, if you are doing any marketing, put it into a framework that's called SOAR. Of course, we had to use a bird metaphor, but SOAR stands for strategy first, then organization, then accountability, then repeatability. Because a lot of people come to me with the R at first and say, oh, we've got, 400 comments and, 10,000 engagements reach on this post. Repeat that for me. Like, why do we do that? I'm like, well, hold on. Before we go do that again, is that a part of our strategy? Like, is it reaching the right people? Can we organize it? Who's going to do it? Does that person who's going to do it, do they have the bandwidth to do it? And then accountable, as soon as like that person is about ready to do it and someone walks in and gives them something else to do, where's the accountability? Are they still going to get that done? Right? And then we can get into repeatability, saying, yeah, then we know how to repeat it as long as all of those other things have been done. And so no matter what you're doing in marketing, I would just say apply SOAR. And now we have SOAR system, which you can check a look at on Littlebird Marketing /SOAR. And it really tells you about like what our system is and how we come around with content marketing and executables for it. But it doesn't matter. You can use that framework with anything that you're doing in marketing today. And I hope that people do.
What specific problems are you helping your clients solve today?
Well, I mean, we wouldn't be in business if we don't have revenue. So that's the long and short of marketing. And not every marketing agency wants to talk about that first. They want to talk about brand. They want to talk about brand promise. They want to talk about the logo. They want to talk about everything else. But the reality is we will not be here tomorrow unless we have revenue. And so what I solve for people is, how is our marketing laddering up into revenue generation? Now, not everything that we do in marketing has a direct ROI. I understand that, but good God, some of it should. And how much of it can, and how do we do that? How do we put that in place? How do we have the right dashboards around us so we know when we're being successful? And so I face that challenge with other leaders who are very revenue minded and help them walk through assessing their system and seeing if they have what they need, and if not, what pieces do they need that we need to come and walk alongside either the crew that they already have, or do they need to completely outsource it to my team?
Who are your ideal clients today?
Well, I very much focus on ideal clients. I walk up to people at conference all the time and ask them at the booth, who is your ideal client? Who are you hoping would walk into the booth today? They don't have a clue. I don't know why they've spent a dime going to that show when they don't know who their ideal client is. I know no matter whether I'm writing a very small social media post or I'm writing a very long ebook, I know exactly who my audience is. I call her C-Suite Stacy. She is in the C-suite. That she's a very revenue-minded person. She could be the owner, but she doesn't have to be, but she acts like the owner. So I have a lot of psychographics about this person. It's someone who is very much in charge of revenue and is very much concerned about the actual allocation of resources from a company in order to generate more revenue. And whether that we do that via brand building, or we do that through, monetizing events and conferences, or whether we do that through in building influence on the team through social media and LinkedIn, it doesn't matter how we do it. We're going to come up with a plan how to do it. But my ideal client buyer is very focused on revenue and wants to be honest about where their team is and how they can help and where they need help.
Got you. You built strong authority in B2B marketing and social influence. What has worked best for attracting consulting and professional services clients consistently?
Wow. Well, the first thing is you need to be consistent before you can attract anybody consistently. And so I talk to people about that a lot. They might write a great blog, or they write an ebook, or sometimes even they go the long distance and they write an actual book, but they're not doing any of those things consistently. And yet they expect to then consistently get inquiries in, and that's just never going to happen. So I think in order to get, requests for consultancy in very consistently, there's got to be an exact message. Like, you need to be out there giving the same value, the same brand message, the same promise, without just completely flaking out, right? And I say that and kind of laugh a little bit, but honestly, that's what I see all the time. People just give up too soon, or they get bored and so they go on to another topic. Well, wait a minute. People come to Priscilla McKinney for very specific things. I should not veer from those topics. Once I mastered one, which I became very well known for building buyer personas and ideal client buyers, I built that. Okay, once I got really known for that, then I went into the next thing. Then I went into the next thing. They're all connected. They're all about B2B revenue generation. So I really stay in my lane. It's gotten to be a very wide lane at this point because I've spent 12 years doing it. I have 450 podcast episodes on just one of my podcasts.
Wow.
So I've been able to talk a lot and consistently about what I'm doing. But every Friday, a podcast episode goes out. Multiple blogs go out every month. My email goes out, and so people are not scratching their head wondering what it is I do and how I can help. You need to actually fill that blank in. And so what I would say if people want those consistent, leads in about, consulting gigs is they first have to be consistent.
You host 2 podcasts. What role do you think podcasting plays for professional service firms trying to build trust, authority, and long-term relationships?
Okay, well, the first thing is trust. There is almost nothing like having someone in your ear, hearing their voice, hearing the humanity of it all, especially for people who've subscribed to my podcast over many years. They'll share with me when I see them somewhere something kind of intimate or maybe a little personal that I might have shared on a podcast. I don't even remember sharing it, but it's made some connection with them. And so it is very dynamic and it is very different from just reading someone's post on social than actually hearing them, especially in headphones. And so I get a lot of C-suite people write back to me and say, oh yeah, I always listen to you when I'm working out, and I'm like, I love to be that companion. So There's a lot of trust because they hear you, they hear the intonation in your voice, and they know when you get passionate about something, they know when you're kind of peeved about something, and they just get that relationship, which kind of builds into what you're asking about, long-term relationship. But I think for a podcast for a B2B consultant, it's really key because almost nobody will say no to you when you ask them if they will be on your podcast. And the better your podcast is, the more rankings you get, the more ratings you get, the more listeners you have, the more they want to be on your podcast. And I love to share access to my really difficultly curated audience. But it builds trust for me to the guest that I'm having. And so that guest ends up getting to know me. We start in that relationship. We get to know each other, but it blossoms over many years. Some guests might even come back on another time, but it's the beginning of a relationship. And then the question is always, how well will you actually maintain that relationship? And I do feel with podcasts, a lot of times it's one and done, but I feel a duty of care. When someone comes on my podcast, I want to know what they do. I want to know how I can help them. Are they a potential person I can actually collaborate with? And collaborating means, yes, I'm going to get what I want out of it, but they're also going to get what they want out of it. And so that starts, I think, a more long-term relationship.
When consulting engagements involve multiple stakeholders and longer buying cycles, how do you personally move prospects from initial conversations to signed engagements?
Well, I teach this when I teach social influence and social selling in a course that I have. And I think it's really key for B2B consultants to understand this. When people typically contact a company or a consultant, they are almost 60% of the way through making their decision. That's the first time you'll ever become aware that someone's looking. And so what you need to do is really have great quality content that's seen in that 60% part of the journey. Before they know you, before your name has come up. What you want them to feel is, oh my gosh, Priscilla, I see you everywhere on this subject. And you want that overwhelming feeling because people do need to see your expertise at least 14 times before it sinks in who you are and what you do. And then we've seen, like you mentioned, that especially in the C-suite and larger average tickets, the buyer group is getting bigger and bigger. I believe it's CEB, now Gartner, now says that that's about 10 people are in a buying group for a significant buying decision at a corporation. Wow. Well, that's key. You can't have your one friend that you were calling and who will bring you in. You need to be known by an entire swath of that leadership. And so I think you have to exert, real social influence over a longer period of time. And you have to show that work through social proof. So what do I mean by that? For example, if someone on an executive team is looking at me for a potential fractional CMO role, they would look on my LinkedIn. They're like, well, I'll take your word for it, Bob. Never mind. I'm not going to take your word. I'm going to go look at her LinkedIn profile. And they can go look through and see how many references I have from other people, how many recommendations I have, and read them for themselves. That's social proof. So it's not just Bob in accounts who's saying, hey, she's good. There's actual tangible third-party results for them to look at. So of course you can do that through case studies, but that's not really done with consultants. That's really more done for agency work. But if you look at your own LinkedIn profile as a consultant, the question that I would ask you is, would you hire you?
Good question. You've built long-term relationships over many years. How do you retain clients, keep them coming back, and continue creating value beyond the first engagement?
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking at some of my year-over-year client list just this week, just doing some prep work for some strategy. And, we've been in business for 12 years, and there's many clients that we have in 11 and 10-year contracts right now. So I'm very pleased
that's
to
awesome.
say.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's very, that feels very good that people have trusted me and trusted our team by extension for so long. But I think it's about building that value all the time. It's also about when you get things wrong, just coming to the meeting and saying, oh my gosh, I got that wrong. Let me tell you how. And let me tell you what I'm going to do or what I would propose that I do in order to fix it. And I think that's what builds that long-term trust. When I go to sleep at night, I'm worried about my clients' companies. I'm worried about their P&Ls. And that's something you can't fake. People know it if you care about, what they're trying to do, their goals. If you reiterate back to them their goals, sometimes people give us goals and they forget about them. And I'm like, I didn't forget. I put them front and center. I put them on our project management. I remind my team when we're working on that account what their goals are. And when people hear you repeat their goals back to you and keep that organized and keep it front and center, it just earns trust over time. And that's how we last through dips. I mean, that means I've had a lot of those accounts through COVID. Right?
Yeah.
And, we've been through some hard times together, but that's also means that a lot of people knew it didn't matter what marketing firm they were with. They probably would have had that kind of a dip. And not everybody who was on our books had a dip during COVID. Some of them, that was a major opportunity and we took it and ran with it. And so to me, it's about just really being honest with companies about how much you're focused on their goals. And that, that's what's important to everybody. Everybody wants to talk about themselves. That is just human nature. As a cultural anthropologist, I know that. Nobody is more important to you than you. And so if, as an agency, we can talk with them and remind them that they are important to us and that we are being mindful of them all the time, that's going to go very, very far.
Where do you find yourself stuck, if at all, right now as a consultant or a leader of an organization?
Well, I do get stuck quite a bit, and where I get stuck often is just getting overwhelmed sometimes with the opportunity. And so I need to go back to my systems that I have that make me unstuckable. And I'll give a shout out for a great book for Heather Kernan, who wrote Unstuckable. And there's a system that you can get yourself out of there. You're never going to get out of like having those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm stuck. But you can get yourself out of it. But what sometimes really is hard for me is that overwhelm. There's so much opportunity. I have so many ideas of what this company can do or that kind of company can do. But you've got to focus. You've got to not get yourself in some kind of paralysis because there's so much to do. Instead, we need to start saying no to a few things so that we can get unstuck in the things where we need traction. And so what I remind my team a lot of times is that getting traction on projects is really key, but distraction is exactly what keeps us from getting it done. And it's helpful to understand that distraction is the opposite of traction. And what I mean by that is to reiterate the first thing I said, which is sometimes when you're stuck, it's because you've said yes to too many things. You need to go back and say no to some other things so that you can get that focus and that traction going.
Looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunity for B2B marketing and digital transformation firms over the next few years?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I am so committed to really mindfully bringing AI into everything we do. And I think we're in a lot of ways ahead of the pack. And in other days, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're so behind. But everybody's behind. Let's just be honest. So I'm very committed there, and that's where the future is for us. But it's that meaningful implementation of AI that is so critical. What are the pieces that were the gaps before? What would we like to know on a dashboard that maybe we couldn't get before? How could AI help us with getting a little bit more qualitative understanding of things that are going on in sales calls? Where are we missing opportunities, right? So I'm thinking about it from a bigger perspective to say, where are the gaps that I've always had in marketing, and is AI a good solution for that one? Now, it's not a good solution for everything. And so, that's what I mean by meaningful application of AI. But my goodness, I think about how much our company has transformed in the last 2 years and how much more meaningful, focused work we're doing because of AI. I'm so grateful.
Priscilla, I love your insights. If people want to find out more about you and see what you do, where should they go?
Well, I'm an influencer on LinkedIn, so certainly find me on LinkedIn. I answer all my own messages there.
Okay.
And you also can read, any of the recommendations people have. So if you're interested in what I do, you'll get definitely a flavor from there. I also love to work with people and teams and bring cohorts of about 10 to 12 people through a 12-week process to become social influencers. And so you can check that out at littlebirdmarketing/social-influence. And there's a free 17-minute video on there to see, what is it that I think of social media and why I think that's so important, especially for consultants. But definitely reaching out to me on LinkedIn. And then I have tons and tons and tons of free things you can crib from us at littlebirdmarketing.com/resources.
We'll put all the links in the description. Thank you so much for coming on the Principal Podcast.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate it. And I'm serious about that review, guys. Help John out.
Hey, I appreciate that too. Thanks, Priscilla.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you've learned valuable lessons and strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.